Good afternoon. Welcome to another chapter conversation with our mentors in Brooklyn to Bogota. We are very happy to have you here. Thank you. And today we are talking about the training of workforce, the importance of training yourself as an entrepreneur. And we have three phenomenal people that will be joining us today. Good afternoon. Please welcome to Sorry, this was a technical thing. Today we have three mentors participating with us. Then let me welcome them. Please, Michael. Hi, Michael, welcome.
Hi, hello, Rosario. Good to be here again. Good to see you. Hello, everybody.
Great to have you again. Thank you for participating.
Of course.
Now, thank you. Now we want to welcome Julia. Hi, Julia. You are mute.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you. I was just transitioning into my office here, so I apologize about that. You caught me a little bit off. But welcome, everyone, and I'm happy to share a conversation with you all based on the future of work as well as the workforce development trends.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support. And of course, it's a pleasure to have you here. And in some minutes, will join us Mario Chamorro. Let's give him some time, but for the moment, the stage is all yours. And thank you for being part of this initiative.
Perfect. Thank you, Rosario. Good to be here with you, Julia. And we'll wait for Mario to join us. So Julia mentioned the future of work. And it's always interesting. We always talk about the future of work, the future of work. Oh, Diego, Mario. Hi, Mario.
Hello, Mario. How are you?
Hey, Michael. How are you? Julia.
Good to see you. You're perfect. You're right on time. We're just talking about the topic here, which is the future of work and the importance of training and education. And I thought it'd be interesting to start where we're always talking about the future of work, but what I'm finding is the future of work is actually the present of work, right? With future work is like in the forward, but it's actually here now. And what a great way to start, Julia, but sharing some interesting new data and information that you have that you'll start to share. So Julie's going to show a couple of slides, and then we'll all discuss it and then open it up for questions that people have that we can both share. So go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, wonderful. So basically, when I speak with employers or anyone looking into like what is the future of work, I always tell them the future of work is actually the present of work, because we can all attest that these past few months have been challenging, and the technology disruption or the disruption in the workforce has not been created by the technology, but it was created by COVID-19, right? We saw a lot of changes on how organizations are operating, how we have a lot of remote learning, a lot of remote operations from all of the organization across the globe. And according to the World Economic Forum, latest report for 2020, you can see that the workforce has been basically structured in three different categories. And one is essential workers, right? The workforce needs those because those are your nurses and firefighters and the people that, are essential workers in every single community. Then another category is the remote workers, and which is essentially only 44% of the companies all across the world were able to adopt to the remote work. And then the displaced workers, those that cannot perform their work from home and like remotely. So those who are having the risk of the unemployment by like huge numbers. So if you look here on the right side of the screen, you're going to see like the percentage of workers that are going to be unemployed by the industry. So 47% in the hospitality and food services, 15% in retail, transportation and education, construction, and 14% in manufacturing, healthcare, and social assistance, right? So basically now we kind of have to look again when we are redesigning the workforce, either we are an organization, a company, or a nonprofit or a government, to see how are we going to reskill or retrain those workers to be able to be relevant and meet the demand of the future of jobs, right?
Definitely. And before we do that, let's go back to that other slide for a second, if you don't mind, if Rosario can push us back to that other slide. So this is what I want to talk about. This is really interesting that Julia's sharing, and she'll share her experiences with this, and really want to start getting curious as to, when we look at the essential workers, we understand that. And a lot of people are saying our essentials workers are our frontline workers in healthcare, but there are also people who are in our supermarkets. There are people who are in our pharmacy. We could always include teachers in as an essential worker at some level too. And the other one that we're seeing is the people who are actually allowing people to access media. So one of my clients here in the United States is a cable company. They provide cable to over 6,000 people in a number of states across the Midwest and northern parts of the Midwest. And I was talking to them and saying, you are essential. They haven't changed. They've had to go to work every day, and they are essential. If I don't have internet, guess what? We couldn't be doing this right now. None of us could. So there's recategorizing the essential workers. But what I really want to take a look at for right now for us to have a conversation is around the remote workers. Because what I'm finding is, for a lot of people who work remotely, there's been a new gap that's been created into what they need to do and how to do it. And in some disciplines, that gap is very small to non-existent, meaning people in Silicon Valley, oh, I work from home, not a big deal. But for other roles, it could be tremendous. So Mario, I'd like to start with you and tell us a little bit, what are you seeing in these statistics, especially your remote workers in the company that you work with, right? And also your experience in a day-to-day just as a consumer.
Sure, Michael. Thank you so much. So I will make like two distinctions. One is kind of like BC and then in AC. It's kind of like the new BC and the new AC, right? Before COVID and after COVID. So I would say like either on the BC time, which was before COVID, for instance, we launched an initiative with Coursera at the beginning of the year under the World Economic Forum in Davos, called the Reskilling Revolution. And the Reskilling Revolution was a group of different companies and countries that came together under the World Economic Forum, where basically it was this place as an emergency category. The Reskilling Revolution is not anymore a nice to have, but it's a must to have, because around 550 million jobs will be displaced over the next 5 to 6 years. So together, these organizations and these countries made the commitment of training 1 billion people before 2030. So then that was before COVID and the BC world. And now, like in the AC world, after COVID or during COVID, I would say, I mean, there was a huge acceleration on this transition. So going to Julia's breakdown, we can see, like even jobs that are such as a lawyer or an accountant or pharmacist are also in risk. It's not anymore just cab drivers or truck drivers, but it's basically a bigger spectrum that is at risk. And here is where platforms such as Coursera came on handy. And basically, we're devoted on the lifelong learning education, which is, in my time, you went to college or you did a master's degree and that was it. Now it's not possible because, according to Thomas Friedman in his book, Thank You for Being Late, technology is going super fast. Human adaptability is not going as fast as technology. So we really need to constantly skill ourselves to don't be part of to don't be displaced. So the categories look pretty good. And in terms of like the categories that we have at Coursera, in terms of like the content that has been mostly demanded, are computer science, data science, and business. And we launched a study that is actually available for free called the Global Skill Index very recently, about like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, where we took the data of the 72 million learners that we have in our platform to identify skill gaps by country, by region, and comparing that around the world. So surprisingly, during COVID, you can see that countries such as Russia, Denmark, Norway, hasn't been impacted financially as well as other countries such as Colombia, Guatemala, and some emerging markets. And
For
those
sure.
countries,
Yeah.
the ones that are ranked more above, I mean, Russia, Denmark, and so on, that are ranked in better positions on data science and computer science.
Yeah, it's you see the same thing in South Korea, right? High internet adaptability and capabilities have shifted that. So thank you for that, and thank you for putting that link up about Coursera. Great company that Mario works for. Really interesting, kind of providing this ability to close those gaps. And what he's sharing with us is that you can be able to identify these gaps through some interesting studies. I also appreciate the reference to Thomas Friedman's. Thank you for being late. Moore's law, really Moore's law 3.0, technologically doubling. But the long and short of Moore's law, and in that book that I got, which is humans will never catch up. We'll never catch up, so let's change the race, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to look at before asking Julia a couple of questions here too is this idea of culture, and how culture, as Mario was just sharing, he mentioned some countries that have smaller gaps and less of an issue, and others that have more. What I'm finding is I do some work in Colombia and in other countries in South America, and Mario, please correct me if I'm wrong, but in Colombia, it's a very face-to-face society. If we're going to do business with each other, BC, before COVID, it's like, no, vamos a salir, we're going to go out, vamos a almuerzo, un cafecito, lo que sea. Like, it's going to be a lot of face-to-face with almost every single, and that's all been taken back. And right, so making that adjustment, that's a reskill, right? That's a reskilling, and for some, it's a new skilling. Because I look at two different things. I could reskill you and upskill you, but then if I have to new skill you, it's something you've never done before. And those are real three different things. So in Colombia, that's one place that we're finding there's a lot of new skilling and reskilling, and the interest in it has been lower. Now it's become a necessity. So I like how you're defining must-haves. And curious to see how Coursera is adjusting depending on the culture. So I'll let you think about that one, but for that, Julia, tell us a little bit about your experience in this idea of COVID and what you're seeing in the needs for these reskills, upskills, and new skills.
Yes, definitely. But before I move forward, I wanted to say thank you, Mario. It's a great pleasure meeting you. I wanted to ask a question. How are you addressing the communities where there is a digital divide, right? Not everyone has access to fast speed internet, or they have a computer or a smartphone where they can access the content. And I believe that was one of the topics discussed during the WSIS forum hosted by United Nations back in the summer. It was a gentleman from UNESCO. He leads some of the initiatives for youth workforce development for the STEM careers. And it was along the terms of the digital disruption, as well as basically we have to always, have the skills updated in technology. And there's a lot of people don't have access to that. So how are you addressing those challenges faced by, certain communities? And it's all over. It's not only in, like Colombia or Europe or other continents. We have it here in the United States as well.
Thank you, Julia. Nice meeting you as well. So if I understood correctly, is how Coursera is addressing the challenges such as the lack of data in certain countries or places?
Mm-hmm. Or okay. Also lack of, the technology itself, like you don't have a computer. Not everyone has access to a smartphone or to a laptop to access the Coursera content and educate themselves.
Yeah, no, I think that's a common challenge that we all have, the different, once upon a time I had, I was having a conversation with a former rector of one university in Colombia called Universidad de los Andes. Mm-hmm. And he said that the next big disruption in education is collaboration. And collaboration means precisely where in opportunities or challenges like this one is a big challenge for the government, but it's also a big challenge for private sector and big challenge also for companies such as Coursera. So Mario, as a person, I firmly believe that internet should be free, basically, as well as other kind of like as a human right, especially in these days. But how Coursera is addressing this? So firstly, is really trying to provide a really good learning experience on products. We invest a lot in product, and surprisingly, also like in mobile and the mobile experience. But surprisingly, in Latin America, 48% of our students. So right now we have 14 million learners in Latin America. In Colombia, it's 2 million. So in Colombia, 49% of these 2 million people are taking courses at Coursera only from their cell phones. They don't use a laptop at all. And in our surveys, by speaking with learners, what we find out is this learner goes to a Wi-Fi point that is a free Wi-Fi access. They download the course and they go back either home or they use it during their commute. But it's totally, I mean, it has a direct correlation with what you say, in the sense of like, when you have 48% of population taking courses only on a cell phone, maybe most of them don't have access to a laptop, but most of like citizens right now have access to a cell phone. So definitely mobile is really, really, really important. And we have been voicing this into different governments across Latin America, the need of free internet and so on. So that's definitely part of our challenges too.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it.
No.
It brings up a good point too. Like, and you guys have seen this, right, over the years with countries and regions and almost continents at some level who have skipped that whole laptop device and gone right to mobile, right? And the innovation that's been created, that Indonesia comes to mind, where their initial mobile phones were just able to swap out 2 or 3 SIM cards in a second, just because they were, I think the average text an Indonesian sent, and I might be wrong here, was like almost like the average 100 texts a day an average Indonesian person would send, just on an average, and that's everybody, because mobile is being that main device. It also brings up a bigger conversation, maybe not for here, but something to think about. And Julia, welcome your thoughts here. Is what are you doing? What are people doing? What are organizations doing? What's something like the UN possibly doing to the people that don't even have money for a smartphone? They don't even have the money for the phone, right? So that gap is so wide. Obviously, Coursera is having it available for mobile. I'm seeing a lot of cable companies here in the United States providing free internet or heavily discounted internet to certain neighborhoods given and regions of the country because of the pandemic. But going forward, until the internet is free for everybody, that's step one. Step two is, how do we get everybody to have a device to access it? Well, so any thoughts, Julia?
Yeah, so I have an idea on it. Currently, we are on a webinar, and I believe there's a couple of entrepreneurs, more than a couple out there, looking to launch their own business, looking for an idea, looking for the next challenge to solve, right? So what are those international bodies are doing, like World Economic Forum and United Nations and World Bank, Organization of the American States? Basically, they all have initiatives, they put together reports, but then they're going back to the industry and to the academia to solve those challenges, right? They only basically provide us with, oh, we have a problem, and now we all have to kind of get together and solve it, right? So I believe that it has to be a more coordinated effort. So we have those big conveners like United Nations, like I mentioned, where everyone is providing a piece for that particular solution, right? So the organizations, they will have additional funding on skilling and reskilling, or they have private foundations where they can donate their funds to make available the technology in the communities where there's no, you don't have access to those technologies. And then you have the academia, right? They're educators, and then you have companies like Coursera and others that, they're disrupting the education industry and coming up with other solutions. So I think everyone should coordinate those efforts and access not only the technology, but then also the funding. And how the companies are benefiting from it is basically, right now, we can work from anywhere, right? So it doesn't matter where the talent is. If they can work remotely, they can work remotely from anywhere. So, right? So they're just increasing their pipeline of talent by investing in the workforce in the communities that don't have access to those technologies. And just to give you an idea right now, and I can talk about cybersecurity because that's kind of my field, and I've been focused on developing program in cybersecurity for reducing the skills gap. And Rosario, if you can share that a link for cybersec.org, which basically shows us the current cybersecurity talent needs for United States is over 500,000 jobs, right? We don't have the talent to fill those jobs, but if we can train the talent in other communities, it will be great, because right now we have a need, and it's it's an immediate need. We're not talking about the future, we have the present. So how can we work with those communities and give the talent the skills needed to fill those jobs? And
Perfect.
then the other thing that I wanted to discuss is the local governments, right? The local communities, they have a lot of power to implement programs in their schools, in any other organizations they manage, and invest their local the local funding, the budgets they're getting. So I'm not sure about how other countries are working, but having worked in a workforce development environment for the past 5 years, we always access funding and implemented programs to address the local talent skills gap we had. So
For sure.
I think
For sure.
looking at those
Two
individual
things.
organizations, we can address some of the challenges.
Yeah, so I think good information, good resources, interesting thing to look at, especially when it comes to what governments can do. But you also talked about building skills, and we had a question here from one of our startup kind of entrepreneurs who's joining the call, part of the incubator, I'm sure. They're looking at this idea of, obviously there's a lot of skills that are needed, right? And there's Javier's question here, both soft skills and technical skills. But his question really is, how do we see the future of education and teaching of technical skills? How are these technical skills going to be taught, evaluated, and trained? Obviously, I'll start with Mario, with you, which is Coursera is kind of a leader in that, right? It's in terms of training people, but how do you see that going forward, especially on the technical sides? How do you see yourselves growing and being able to kind of train, evaluate, and teach all those three things that people might be looking for?
Thanks, Michael. So yes, first of all, definitely there's a big demand for skills under computer science. So one of the initiatives that we launched during the pandemic is called the Coursera for Campus Recovery Initiative, where actually this is a really nice like story. But back in January 2020, Wuhan University in China was the very first university who closed their doors because of COVID. When that happened, Wuhan University reached out to Duke University, and Duke is a university that is partner of Coursera. So Duke University reached out to Coursera and said, like, hey, how about if you guys provide the platform that you guys have called Coursera for Campus for Wuhan University that had to close their doors because of this pandemic that is happening in China. So Coursera made that platform available for free so the University of Wuhan could keep educating their students. What we know, I mean, the story that we know after January is, like basically the pandemic spread all around the world. 96% of universities closed their doors, and around like 1.6 billion learners couldn't go back to their universities. So by March, Coursera opened up this initiative called Coursera for Campus, totally for free for any university around the world. So until January, February, we only had 30 universities using Coursera for Campus, this platform. And after the pandemic, we have 3,700 universities around the world using this platform. I'm mentioning that example because I believe kind of like the future of education, the present is not only the future, but it's the present, is basically this union between technology and like presential, where kind of like where you have this merge and they kind of like collaborate and they kind of like make a better learning experience for each other. And in terms of content, going back to your question, Michael, about computer science, from this program that I'm mentioning about the Coursera for Campus Recovery Initiative, we had around 3.1 million people around the world that ended up taking classes for free from these initiatives. And one of the, if I would say like the top course that has been taken is called Python for Everyone from University of Michigan. So when you see kind of like the most demanded content in Coursera, definitely some of it comes, or most of it comes from computer science. And in terms of Coursera, another example we see kind of like the demand for this type of content from our learners. So we also acquired a company about 12 months ago called Rhyme, and Rhyme provides an experience for the learner to learn by doing, and is focused on technical skills. So you have the tutor on your right, video, and on the left you have your own platform where you're gonna kind of start doing, I don't know, like Python or C++ or Tableau, and you don't have to go anywhere else, but basically you're learning by doing, and when you do things wrong, basically it tells you and you kind of like go back and so on. And when we have been doing research on these learners, the results have been really, really good in terms of like learning experience. So again, one, we are aware of this need of computer science skills. B, definitely focus on creating a good learning experience. For that, we acquired this company, and right now that those projects are getting a lot of traction. And three, I believe there's a big commitment for Coursera to work with universities and to work with companies. And again, I believe this should be a really good merge between those two to train employees.
Perfect. So some collaborative, some being able to reach out to different people to get needs of the learners and the population, whether it's on campus or in the workforce. I mean, the other thing that I'm seeing, and then Julia, curious to hear your thoughts here too, but related to how we're going to teach, evaluate, and train technical skills. I think the beautiful thing is that there's so many opportunities like Coursera, like other avenues, a la Khan Academy, Code Academy, lots of different startups, and a lot of GitHubs, your free resources to really allow learners to learn at their pace, what they want, when they want, and not just to learn how to like play a few notes on the guitar. You have the ability now to get people to be able to solos, amazing guitar players and looking at that is to be an amazing coder just by learning by yourself, right? Evaluation and training of that can also go the normal routes. We're seeing universities, especially second tier and third tier universities in the United States in particular, really struggling to survive. And because of the pandemic, we're like, well, am I going to pay all that money for virtual? And if you're still going to go the route of the university, what we're seeing is a lot of schools starting to outsource their stack skills, if you will, bringing people who are not necessarily full professors or assistant professors in to teach those courses. And the reason they need to do that is the students want those courses, but the university doesn't offer them. So there's a lot of collaboration going on there that within a traditional route, you can still learn. And I'm going to close by telling you one quick story and then have Julia give her thoughts. So I'm based in San Francisco, and I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of the big tech companies, a la Apples and Googles of the world, as well as small startups that have grown to big companies like Airbnbs and a host of other ones. But years ago, when I was working with a high level of Googlers, somebody told a story. They were telling a little bit about themselves, and one gentleman who was a little bit older raised his hand and told a true story that said, I never finished high school. Okay. Senior engineer at Google, never finished high school. Okay. Now, what's so fascinating about that story is, one, amazing, good for him, because he was able to self-educate and learn a technical skill through all these things that are available. But secondly was, for years, Google wouldn't hire people if they didn't have certain scores on their SATs and didn't come from some top tier universities. Their algorithm would basically knock you out, even if you were perfect for a job. And I'll tell you personally, years ago, I was applying to a job at Google, and I went very close to the end, and they said, what was your SAT scores? And I'm like, what? My SAT scores from like 20 years ago, and it wasn't high enough. So they're like, see you later. Now they realized that they were missing out on talent. So they themselves adapted and opened it up and said, we'll take people who don't have a high school degree if you're skilled to do what you want. So I think for the people out there who are looking out about training and evaluating technical skills, it's an amazing time to be alive for that, because you really have this opportunity. There's less and less obstacles in front of you, and you can dream. If you can think, I want to learn how to learn Python, C++, guess what? It's there for you. It's there for you on these non-traditional routes. And so it's interesting. I'm curious, Julia, for your thoughts, especially with your experience in cybersecurity. We have these people learning how to code, learning how to do all these things, getting into companies, but how do we evaluate and make sure they're actually doing the right things and they're safe about it?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question, and thanks for sharing the story. Just a little bit of background. Basically, currently I'm working for a higher education institution, and they're actually adopting their way of teaching technical skills. So we implemented apprenticeship models programs for cybersecurity education. So we basically accelerate the learning time from 4-year degree to less than 1 year, and it's done in parallel. You have an educational component, and then you have an on-the-job training component, which requires candidates to have a minimum 2,000 hours on a job training doing the work. But I think university have their own merits. And what I mean by that is, in addition to all of those technical skills, right, and to learn on our own those technical skills, it requires us to have amazing soft skills. And what I mean by that, it means patience. It means, we have to endure the teaching ourselves, right? We have to be resilient. We're not going to get it right the first time. And more chances are that we might make mistakes, right? We can learn coding on our own, but if we don't have the concepts, and especially the security concepts to create the code that's going to be secure, then how good that code is, right? So I think it's a combination of the two worlds, right? Your university route in addition to some self-learning, because right now, if you go the university route, you're not going to be able to compete if you're not tech savvy and if you're not learning and doing additional work on your own. And then the other route is doing it on your own, but then you also always have to refer back to the frameworks and what are those standards for that particular occupation, because I'm not sure how the rest of the world works, but in the United States, everything is standardized, right? So if you are if you're looking to apply for a job, it has to be categorized by the Department of Labor, and the Department of Labor has implemented all of these standards and changes to curriculums, and in education, it can be challenging, right? So refer back to your question in cybersecurity, I think education is important, but then also on-the-job training is important, because we have to basically give the candidates and teach the candidates those skills that are needed on a job. And programs like apprenticeships are starting to get a lot of attention in the United States, not only for your industries where apprenticeship programs were adopted, like construction industry and manufacturing, but now for the STEM programs. So if you're looking from anywhere legislations coming from the White House or Department of Labor or Department of Commerce, there's always grants opportunities, and there's always additional opportunities for implementing a non-traditional way of learning to STEM careers. And nice. I think that is the future, because I've been working in, like I said, in workforce development, and we had candidates with 4-year degree. They couldn't qualify to have an entry-level jobs, but they were promised a middle skills job and salaries in $80,000 entry salary, but because of the lack of experience, and employers always look at the experience. So a combination of both things will be great.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you for that. So we had another question here talking about the need to make solutions available for smartphones rather than PCs, right? Especially around platforms looking to around marketing financial decisions by small and medium enterprises. So I want to talk a little bit about that. From what I'm reading and what I'm seeing, and this is a little bit future of work, not too far in the future of work, but definitely not right now, which is these things are going to go away, right? We are going to move pretty quickly to objectless. And you can see it. I mean, I can envision in maybe 5-10 years, who knows, maybe less, probably not more. People are going to look back at the last 10 years on video and film and go, you guys were all doing this all the time. What the hell? What was on? What's going on with that? Why were you always all looking down at your phones? How lame was that? And you guys were at concerts doing this and in public doing this. Everybody, you lost for years. You lost the use of a hand. All right, because we're going to go objectless, right? And it might be here, it might be here, it might be here, right? And so I think about when people are coding, and Mario, curious your thoughts here, and Julia as well. People who are coding and creating, and entrepreneurs who might be listening, when they're creating new software for now and for the future, it almost has to be object agnostic, if you will. 100% it should be PC, but it's got to just be like, it's got to be available for everything. I think if you only make it for one thing, you'll limit yourself to not getting the rest of the market. But it should just be adaptable. And then once we get to an object list, it might have to shift as well, right? Coursera, you're making content. Where people access it has to be available everywhere. So I'm sure you guys are looking at that, and everyone who makes content, I make content, people need to access it. I want to be object agnostic, as I said, so it can be available everywhere in all different forms very seamlessly and easily. So Mario, how do you deal with that challenge? And then also just thoughts on making stuff available for smartphones. You talked a little bit about that, but more just that future.
Yeah, that's it. That's a very interesting question. So we're currently experimenting a lot with mostly kind of like AI and machine learning to provide a better learning experience, to find out what is kind of like good retention modes, what are better kind of like learning ideas. As of now, the platforms that we have are mostly focused on on laptops and cell phones. But I think kind of like in platforms such as, I don't know, like VR, AR, and so on. Right now, we're still facing kind of like the cell phone from Wall Street, right? Like Michael Douglas, like walking with this gigantic cell phone on the beach. So, I don't know, like it's still kind of like, it's cool, but it's not really cool. So, I guess when the time comes, we will move forward mostly into that direction. And in terms of content, Michael, so Coursera doesn't produce any content, right? Coursera, what it does is partners with universities or with industries, and this in industries such as Google Cloud, Amazon Web Services, Facebook, Alibaba, and so on, and they bring their courses that are job skill-oriented courses into Coursera, and universities as well. So in terms of content, we do have content such as like autonomous vehicles and like VR and AR and so on that have been definitely highly demanded by particular groups. So we are mostly facing that particular challenge on the creation of content to educate or to provide education to that particular group of enthusiasts and like professionals on those areas, but not right now focusing in something specific to produce our own wearables right now.
That makes sense. So, but you're the conduit of content, right? You're the conduit, meaning content comes to you from your clients, and then you have to make it available to everybody.
Yes, and we work with those content providers. We have a team called Teaching and Learning, and we provide different experiences about how to create this content.
Okay, great, thank you, Julia. What would you add?
Oh, great. So when I look at those, making those type of decision, I always look at my audience, right? So we discussed, who are we marketing for? So each generation has a different level of adoption of connected devices, as well as like in some community, as you mentioned, they totally skip the laptop adoption and went straight to the smart devices like a iPad and an iPhone because, it's just the technology was so disrupted that there wasn't a need there, right? So I think there's a couple of good reports out there that everyone that's interested to see which type of device they should develop the content for, to look what are the number of the connected devices and by generation, by, segment your markets, right? I always like to look at who's my audience, who's going to be my user, right? And then based on that, I'm going to create a strategy, how I'm going to get my content in front of them, right? So I think the reports and looking at the numbers are really helpful because it's only going to make us better, right? Like we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to look at, okay, what we can tweak to actually engage the audiences and provide the services they need, and by the means of communication they're comfortable with. Because I certainly see that somebody that's looking to provide services to the baby boomers in this country, they're not going to push everything via devices because they hardly know how to use a cell phone, right? So it all depends who your market audience is.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Always knowing who you're designing for, essentially. But as I said, go ahead, Mario. You're still on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you.
There you go. There you go.
That's kind of like one of like the common phrases right now. You're on mute.
I know. I'm gonna have a shirt that says "You're on mute." I'm sure it already exists, but it's or a hat. You're on mute.
That I'm sure that'll have a huge demand for that. So in terms of like also like other kind of like type of channels that we are right now, like where we have been experimenting, is so we developed like the first college degree also totally online. And we do have more than 21 master's degrees right now at Coursera, and master's degrees with, let's say, UPenn on computer science, or with University of Michigan, master's degree on data science. And in Colombia, or with Universidad de los Andes, a master's in computer science and data science as well. So definitely this gives, and it has kind of like it has academic credit. So you have the same diploma, the same alumni experience, the same connections and so on. But, you know, the cost is definitely way lower. But at the same time, we have been developing specific tools for this degrees platform that allows professors to have a better experience of online teaching, and for learners to don't quit their jobs, and, you know, like to basically don't stop their lives to go to do a master's degree, but just to do it as they go with their lives.
Perfect. Good. Excellent. Thank you for that. Interesting. At that level, depth, right? Master's level stuff, really just like the whole kind of range that you're able to offer. One thing I'd like to just kind of switch to is we always talk about future work and training and skills. And of course, there's a heavy emphasis and interest on the technical side, which is valid, right? The future of work, the current changes with COVID, remote workers, people losing their job, as we talked about, has this need for reskilling, and a lot of it is on the technical side. You know, VR and AR and AI and everything that we're talking about. But I don't want to discount the importance and need for what I personally call the core skills. Some people might call them soft skills. Julia mentioned them a little bit as well. And that's kind of the space that I spend a lot of time in, which is around communication and influencing and cultivating cultures and managing conflict and selling to people in a positive way, team building, high performance, cohesiveness, all these kind of things. And what I have found in my experience is even people who have gotten advanced degrees, right? Even people who are leaders of really amazing companies. I work a lot with C-level suites and startups and larger companies. And initially I was surprised with, honestly, the lack of soft or core skill ability that people have, even at the highest level. And so for you startup folks out there, for you entrepreneurs out there, we spend so much time on the technical side. The technical side very often allows you to make your startup a reality. So it's extremely important. But don't discount or belittle the soft skill, the core skill, the communication side, because that's really what I see allows for sustained success. And even if your skills are so-so in that world, you'll be far ahead of most people. And so what I'm curious to hear from Mario and both from Julia, what's your experience and your thoughts on that development of the communication, people, soft core side skill in relation to people's success?
Julia, you want to go first?
Okay, yeah, I don't have a problem. So yeah, obviously, I think the technical skills are something that we can teach, right? You can go to a university, or you can enroll into an online course, and in the end of the it you'll have some courses. But the soft skills are really, really hard to teach. And employers now, if you're running any type of survey in United States with what are the most essential skills right now, I think that one of the top 5 is the social skills, right? The employability skills, the able to show up on time at work, the able to work, the able to have the resilience to overcome those challenges, and communications and pursuing your audience. If you're in sales or marketing, how are you going to do that, right? So I am not going to talk about the newer generation coming in, because I think they have been born with their phones on their hands, so they have very great technology skills, but when it comes to the soft skills, they have a lack of those social skills. And I think it's very important to cultivate that, to cultivate it in a family, to cultivate it at work, between your peers, because those are going to determine if you're successful or not, right? If you can develop great code, you can come up with great processes, but if you're not able to communicate that and show your value proposition to your audience, to your customers, to whomever you're trying to persuade, right? It's not going to get anywhere, right? So I believe that everyone should have this exercise at home, and I call it brain mapping, right? I come from a sales business development background, and one of the things that I've learned from one of my managers was like, okay, what is your value added? When you speak to your customer, what is the features, benefits, value, right? So whenever I'm discussing to to an audience. It doesn't matter if I'm working with my finance department or if I'm working with my marketing or if I'm working with the students or the employers or whomever my audience is. I always think from it, what is going to this conversation gonna look like, and how I'm gonna persuade my audience to actually sell them my idea and to move forward this initiative. And I think those are important. And then the other aspect is the able to, being resilient, right? We've seen right now a lot of challenges with COVID-19. And actually, according to the study done by the World Economic Forum, resilience is top number 9 priority for employers, because you need to work with somebody that actually is not going to get lost or lose their temper to those challenging situations, is going to be able to keep their cool and have the operations going. And in the end of the day, those are the people that decide for your organization, or you are deciding for your organization, and how you're going to handle those challenges is going to be important.
Good, great. Perfect. Marty, what would you add from your experience?
I mean, I will echo Julia, but in terms, again, from the data that I have been seeing this year, particularly during the pandemic, courses such as the Science of Well-Being from Yale at Coursera have 2.5 million enrollments only since the pandemic started. And I can see also that courses in Latin America, such as Primeros Auxilios Psicológicos, which is another course on this. It's not, I call it human skills instead of soft skills, but again, courses in human skill or soft skills have a pretty, especially during the pandemic, had a very increasing demand. And that's a good symptom of, like how we want to face crisis or difficult times such as pandemic. So again, here is where soft skills or human skills come into place, and how we face conflict is how we show our personality and how we show to this world. So definitely those are extremely important for us.
Yeah, well, no doubt. Overcoming obstacles, having to deal with all that stuff. I see that. I think also, at least in the United States, what I'm seeing somewhat in other countries with some of the clients that I work with is less and less tolerance for cultures in companies where people might have quick tempers, angry, yelling, toxicity, if you will. Less and less tolerance for that. Companies reacting quickly if they see people at high levels or lower levels doing that, and expectations for people entering the workforce to not have that. And so that means, from a leadership perspective, adjusting how you normally would communicate with people, and then from new people coming in, to Julia's point, being able to develop them into the skills that they might need to communicate better with each other. One of the things that you mentioned before, Mario, was collaboration, right? So I love collaboration. I think collaboration allows you to do what Julia mentioned either, which is co-create, right? We talk about co-creating the future that you want. You see that in memes and a lot of words. And I don't think that's just words, right? I think that if you're going to collaborate with somebody, really, really collaborate with somebody, you have to have the ability to really listen to them. If you can't listen to somebody and you can't understand them and get curious and ask good questions, and it's going to be hard to collaborate, right? Collaboration isn't always seamless. It's two people trying to do something together, and they might have different opinions. So some advice I got years ago was, in order to be a successful leader, and also in order for you to grow within an organization, you have to have the ability to take direction. So if you ever acted or ever seen people act, directors very often seek actors who are greatly talented, but they can take direction. So they don't always have to do it their way. So if the director has a vision that they want the person to do it a little bit slower, that actor can do it slower in the way they do it slower, right? And what happens is, if you're able to take direction consistently, you'll work a long time. People will want to work with you. And it doesn't mean you just do what people say. That's not taking direction. Taking direction is listening to what they have and incorporating that into how you work, if it makes sense. So I feel like the core skills, honestly, are the future. And I'm not just saying that because that's where I spend a lot of time. No doubt that technical skills will continue, and we'll have more and more places to do it. But if we just do that without the other side, we'll limit this ability to co-create this future that we're talking about. So yeah, so interesting. So I just want to also close here. We're at 10 minutes, and so that one of the things that we're looking at for future of work. What's the thing you're most excited about, and what's the thing you're most concerned about?
I am very excited about the possibilities, and I'm really excited about. I mean, what we have the best, not only in Latin America but in the world, is talent. So if we find the right challenges to skill or to provide access to education for this talent, I think we can reimagine the story of our countries, of our regions, and also we can change the narrative of the world that we want to live in, right? So kind of like, I'm excited about that. Channels right now exist. I mean, right now I can say, like, there's no excuses, as you say, Michael, at the very beginning, if you, Julie as well, if you want to learn how to code, you can do it. If you want to do, I don't know, X, Y, and Z, you can do it. So there's no excuses. And I'm excited about like this, again, this collaboration between kind of like the tech part and the human part. And I would say also like the tech part, call it like hard skills, and the human part, call it like the human skills or soft skills. Where one of the stories that I would love to share maybe in 10 years is, I'm not working on this, but I would love to see a school of like feedback, right? And maybe kind of like principals have like the feedback school like as a requirement in every single high school in the world, or things like that. So I'm excited about this new world. I mean, the AC before COVID, the BC, and after COVID. I think like nostalgia is not a card that we can play anymore. Like these people who say like someday we'll go back to the world how it used to be. No, that's lie. That's not reality. So
yeah.
I can see this is a good opportunity, and I'm excited to see how human race will reinvent this world on the
beautiful. So the human potential, and by the way, so BC before Corona, AC after Corona. You're missing what we're in right now is called DC, which is during Corona. So yeah, AC, BC, DC, AC. Anyway, so perfect, Mario. Thank you for your answer. Julia, how about you? What are you most excited about when you talk about the future of work?
Oh, I have one word: possibilities, right? So if we put that context in every, like, let's say in an employer's context, they can redesign and reinvent their processes to adopt it to this new way of working and doing things, implement the technologies they need, and then also invest in their talent and in their workforce, right? For the longest time, employers wanted to poach employees, so they not necessarily looked for talent and groom the talent and build their talent pipeline, but just go to their competitor and hire their best talent for an extra 10% increase, right? So we can't afford to do that anymore, and actually looking at the ways we're doing things. And there's more and more organization coming in and vouching funding for workforce development. So Verizon just pledged $44 million for their workforce development initiative. I know you look shocked, but I think it was PwC, they vouched $3 billion for reskilling of their workforce. So I think that everyone has been challenged, from an employer to talent to the local organizations, and they're looking to how's the future gonna look like? And then if we are creating this new workforce environment, why not take all aspects in consideration? Why not look at the employer's needs, trying to adapt to their lifestyle so they don't have to work full-time and not enjoy life, so they can adapt to the way they work. They're still productive, but they still can enjoy time with their family, right? And then also for the talent out there, it's a world of possibilities for both entrepreneurs who wants to start their own business, because we have a lot of challenges, right? So I don't know if Rosario can share the tech adoption by 2025, and it's going to show you what are the most technologies companies are going to implement in their organizations. And that's just going to show you like where's the challenge and how you can come up with a solution. And I think everyone is willing to hear your pitch, just because they have a need, right? And right now we have the ability to create like a minimal viable product and then just put it out there and test it on the market, because every single organization has been disrupted by this new way of doing things, right? So if you're looking to provide, those are like the top 5 technology adoptions, but there's more, and I'll share the link with you if you look at the World Economic Forum Future of Work. So if you are into any of those areas, I think you just can come up with a product or with a solution that can reinvent your customers' processes, and you grow with them, right?
Definitely. So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and there's going to be a huge adoption in subject matter expert, right? So a lot of companies, they saw right now that actually they don't need a lot of the workforce. So they are reducing their workforce, but then they're looking for experts to work on particular area to make them, their processes and reinventing, especially in R&D. You don't have to have talent that you pay them over $200,000 a year just to reinvent some processes. You just hire consultants to provide you, here's expertise on that, and it's on a part-time basis, not necessarily like full-time. So the world of possibilities.
The world of possibilities. Awesome. That's good. There's so many there to look at that. Cool. So as we look to flip up, we'll give a quick voice to concerns. I would say for myself, what I'm most excited about is recalibration. Right. I believe there's a recalibration that's available now, given COVID and given the world of possibilities that Julia mentioned, which is we're recalibrating our future in terms of not necessarily a work-life balance, but that we're working and living in a place where we have equilibrium, right? And there's a difference between balance and equilibrium. If we're in balance, that means we can quickly come out of it. Like if when you're a kid and you're on a seesaw, right? Well, how do you say seesaw in Mario in Spanish? The little fun game. ¿Cómo se llama? Pipo, algo así.
El gatos arriba y gatos abajo.
Yeah, right. So the seesaw in Romanian, what was it in Romanian, seesaw?
Do
you remember?
Sorry, I haven't used that word in over 20 years.
You don't remember it, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, when you're on a seesaw, someone's up high, and if they get off, you drop, and you're like, oh, right. And if you get balanced, there's got to be a constant tension. If you're walking over a tightrope, you have to be in constant tension. A balance beam, you have to be on constant tension, and really quickly you can become out of balance and you can fall down. When you're in equilibrium, you have weights on either side of the scale that's exact. If you take a little bit off, you might just go down a little bit. And so I think we're in this space where we can recalibrate our lives and work to be more equilibrium than balanced. And that might be places where you don't have to necessarily work full time. There might be a universal basic income for people, and people will be able to do more things that they want. So I like that. When it comes to concern, right, is just, for me, it's the concern of the gaps widening between people who have money and they don't, and people who have access to this digital world and don't, right? To close us today, balsonar, is that what, balançoar?
Balançoar, from balance.
From balance, okay, perfect. So just to close today, just to let everybody know tuning in that tomorrow there is at 6 p.m. there's a conversation with mentors around productivity and frameworks. Are they useful or just a trend? We're not going to answer that question. Come in tomorrow to figure that out. But I just want to do last words. It's been great speaking with both of you, Julia and Mario. Thank you for taking time to join me today and join us today. Some last thoughts for people out there who might be listening, who might be in the entrepreneur world, who might be looking to build their own skills. What do you suggest for them in this future of work, Mario?
I guess I just type a phrase, a quote from Gandhi, was live as if you were going to die tomorrow and learn as if you were going to live forever. So
perfect. That's it.
Live the maximum, reflect on your experiences, and keep learning all the time. Nice.
I love it. Great quote. Julia, how about you? What are some last thoughts for people?
So what I would like to add is basically we live in this challenging world, but there's still hope. And I think if we're doing the things the right way, and what I mean by the right way, if we're inventing a product or a solution, not cutting corners, and actually do the work and put a sweat in and work hard and think from a perspective of what is the challenge or the solution of the challenge I'm solving, instead of how I can make money out of it, I think is going to get you ahead of your competition, because we have to leave on the side the money-making thoughts for the first time and see how we can solve the challenge. How can I contribute to this world in order, to have a better place or a better future or better tomorrow after
Perfect.
COVID or during COVID.
Right. No, I agree with you. So putting good energy out there without worrying about, am I going to make money in this? Just trying to put good energy out there might come back. And I would agree with both of you. And I say the last thing here for me, which is you're going to face obstacles. We're all facing a big obstacle right now, only if we consider it to be an obstacle. So for me, it's taking a look at how can the obstacles you face actually be beneficial to you? how can you reframe the obstacles you face as a benefit to you? If you're able to do that, guess what? You'll have less obstacles in your life and a lot more benefits, right? Harder than it looks, but it's just the mindset thing as well, which I think is really important. So with that, I think we're at time. I think we all have to go, but thank you guys. Thank you everyone for listening to us. I know there's contact information. Feel free to reach any of us on LinkedIn, join our communities, and happy to hopefully work with you guys as mentees coming up in the next couple of weeks. Un placer a todos los latinos que hablan español, a gente que fala português. Un abrazo. Big hugs to everybody. Mario, Julia, thank you guys both for joining me. It was great talking and meeting with you.
Good luck.
Ciao, Bacalaos. Thank you.